I think there are one thing important to take into consideration here, which is the promises given to 450 million Europeans that their technology would be safe to use, it wouldn't be addictive, it wouldn't pose harm to mental health, that the market would be open for startups and innovation, and that it would be transparent if things were taken down, because we take freedom of speech very, very, very dearly. And actually, as it were before the Digital Services Act, you would never know what was taken down. And the Digital Services Act actually provides the transparency as to what is taken down or not. So I think it's really important not to see this as an issue between the Commission and US lawmakers or the Trump administration, but also to see this as a promise being fulfilled to 450 million people.
That is a European perspective, but ultimately, it seems that the EU will have to offer also something in return to the United States if they want to bring some of the tariffs down and ultimately find a trade compromise as well. And some have suggested that the area for agreement could be in digital services and could be looking at some of the fines. Do you get a sense that there is a little bit more willingness from the Europeans at this stage, from this new European Commission, to perhaps rethink the rule book?
Well, I think that the new colleagues, they have very, very cleverly applied the legislation where they found illegal behavior, because it's a first. So the fines has been quite modest. And, you know, I know this is trivial, but it's very easy to avoid fines. You can follow the legislation. And that is really not something that is, you know, out of the ordinary. These are very simple things, just asking huge, very successful companies not to misuse their market power. And I think if you want an active, open, competitive, contestable market, well, then you need to do something. And that is why this legislation in here. So obviously, and I may agree that this is a paradox, actually the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act bring about something that is very, very much aligned with very traditional American values about competition and making the best one wins and enabling people to show what they can do.
However, and you use the word yourself, that the fines that we have seen so far were quite modest. So I'm wondering whether you think this is your colleagues, you're now thinking, okay, perhaps we don't want to use all of the tools that we have available just yet, or already a concession to the United States so they don't escalate the tensions we have seen in recent times.
No, I think it's a wise approach. When you have a new piece of legislation, and of course, there are discussions about how should the different provisions be understood. Then you need to show the businesses who are in your searchlights what it is that you're asking for, what it is that the people's representatives in the European Parliament and in Council, what it was that they wanted. So I think it's very prudent. It's a very good way of introducing new legislation in order to enable the companies to avoid any fines by following the legislation and enabling that dynamic tech market that we do need in Europe.
Shifting gears a little bit and looking at mergers, we actually have seen the European Commission launching a new consultation. They seem to be reviewing this policy and some of the intricacies there. What I would like to understand is whether you think that there's a risk that this new commission might erase some of your legacy by making mergers easier in the bloc.
Well, as it also is said is in Ursula von der Leyen's political guidelines, she wants to avoid concentration because we do see that in the US market. The concentration in some markets are giving Americans higher prices, less choice, not a very exquisite quality. I think some of the things actually that both the Biden and now the Trump administration are focusing on. So of course, it's always a balance. And the paradox of these times is, of course, that if global trade regionalizes, then fewer markets can be seen as global. And we have had a tendency where more and more and more markets were seen as global, enabling consolidation because the customers could turn to someone else in that global market. If we have a regionalization, well, it's increasingly difficult to turn to someone else if the merging parties are increasing prices or making their quality inferior to what it was before. So I think we're in a situation where it's really important to encourage that we get free and open global markets rather than regionalizing. As it was also said earlier on your show, the loss of global GDP will be devastating. And we don't need that. We need the creation of value in order to invest not only in defense, but also in inclusive societies.